Welcome to Inventive Minds Child, Youth, and Family Support Center. We are a not-for-profit organization working with families in their day-to-day parenting by providing workshops and seminars related to pediatric and child development. Inventive Minds provides care in the early years sectors for newborn to age 6, licensed under the Ministry of Education all across Ontario. Inventive Minds carries an elementary school open to international students from junior kindergarten to grade 3. Inventive Minds Family Center helps families in mediation, arbitration, and parent coordination cases related to family separation and divorce. We support families during and past separation and divorce. Inventive Minds works with court orders to conduct child voice report and parenting courses related to CAS, court, and mediation purposes. To learn more about our services, reach us at inventivekids.com. My name is Rose, the founder of Inventive Minds Family Center.
Today, we have Rose Morsch. She has experience of over 20 years in child development and a bachelor's in child development, RECE, parent practitioner, and family mediator. She specializes in working with infancy to teens and is the director of operations for Inventive Minds Child, Youth, and Family Support Center. So in other words, she is highly knowledgeable, highly skilled, has a lot of experience, and is easily ready to take on today's topic. Let's do it. Let's have a good time. It's great to have you here, Rose.
Thanks for having me, Adam.
My pleasure. I think what would make the most amount of sense is just to define what sibling rivalry is. Also, how early can it be detected and observed in children?
Well, sibling rivalry is really when one child has difficulty expressing their emotions, where that emotion can be in the form of a rage through physical behavior, or it could be through emotional cues that happens in the house. It really varies about how early the rivalry can start in the home, and normally starts as early as senior infancy, which would be around 17 months. If there's a new baby born in the house, you can start seeing sibling rivalry through feeling of jealousy. I'm no longer wanted. The baby is more important than I am. So they're just hitting those emotions and they don't know where those emotions are coming from. But as they get older, it changes. It actually can be more over the toy, over how the parenting is taking place in the house, where sibling rivalry can take place.
Right. I believe that it is fairly common. I know that me with my older brother, I experienced that a lot growing up. He was 3 years older than me. He was very academic. He learned how to read early on, whereas I was very different. I was much more athletic. I was much more artistic. Because of that, there were variations in terms of how we thought about things. And when you're a child, you don't really understand how to express yourself. You don't have any emotional education of any sort. So you're just relying a lot on your lizard brain, if you will, your limbic system. You're just reacting to things and making decisions based upon pure emotion a lot of times. And there can be so many conflicts arise from that. If you grow up and a lot of us, we weren't exposed to any sort of emotional education. So because of that, it can be very challenging to know how to handle sibling rivalry as a parent. You can identify it and you can see it and you can know it's happening because I think it tends to be fairly obvious, but it can be very challenging to know how to handle that kind of thing. So, of course, I know that Rose has a lot of experience with this. I have my own experiences in this. I'm very confident we can help you as parents understand what you can do potentially to help you out. Just to keep in mind that everything that we say, of course, in these workshops, in this podcast, is meant for educational purposes only. We can't say that these are very specific things that you must absolutely do across the board, generally speaking, but we can certainly give some ideas of things that have worked just for educational purposes. So is there anything to that you wanted to add a little bit more to, Rose?
I think that's perfect.
Let's go on to the next question. How does our parenting style affect sibling rivalry?
It's very interesting. As we do parenting, we all become aware of techniques that we carry or parenting traps we fall into in daily basis without recognizing, and how those can create an environment that can stimulate sibling rivalry. If you have a home that they have polarized parenting, one parent has their own techniques, where the other parent may carry a different technique. One parent can be more assertive, where one parent is more laid back and easygoing. You can see a sibling rivalry being encouraged in that home a little bit more. It really depends to how you parent at home. There are three different types of parenting. There's the authoritative, there's the authoritarian, and there is the permissive parenting style. The permissive parent has boundaries, but their boundaries changes. At one moment, it could be a yes for a child. The next moment could be a no for a child. That can create an environment where can actually create more sibling rivalry. You can have an environment where the parents are authoritarian. So they're basically constantly using emotional cues by comparing one child to the next. Did you see how your brother did this? How can you not do it like your brother? Or can you see what your cousin did? So that creates that kind of rivalry inside, and that can come into an emotional or physical dispute in the house among the children or even with their parents. The best parenting style that research indicates is authoritative parenting, where you have a set of boundaries and you're assertive, you follow through, you're consistent, you don't change it around, you don't use emotional cues. And those are the things that brings that emotional regulation for you as a parent. The same thing for the child, for them to be able to create that environment where both children are attuned, or the older sibling is not threatened by the birth of a new child to show big emotions.
Yeah, you mentioned a couple things here that are excellent point. First, talking about the consistency, so setting the rule. For children especially, everything feels like a game of sort. And the best games have rules. Without rules, you don't know what to do. But if you give rules and boundaries and you understand what needs to be done, then it makes things easier. But also the rules need to stay consistent. If you've ever played a game with somebody who is all of a sudden just changed the rules on you, it becomes frustrating and confusing, and it ends up giving you this impression like maybe they're cheating or something. It becomes weird. But for the most part, if the boundaries are set, it just makes things a lot easier for children to understand how to navigate life. As a child, everything is brand new. You don't know necessarily how to handle that. So if you have your parents as a guiding force to set those boundaries, it just makes navigating through life so much easier, so much less stressful. Also, the idea of comparing, where it's very natural for all of us to compare ourselves to other people. And we know through a lot of psychological evidence that that doesn't help our self-esteem. So if you're doing that to your child, then of course that can bring them down, whether you're comparing them to their sibling or to a cousin, like you said, or an uncle or whoever. It can affect someone's self-esteem.
Obviously, adult conversation should never be in front of the children, especially if the conversation is about the child. So those conversations should be behind the door. And I think it's like having a contract. This is my views. These are my values as a parent and beliefs. This is your views, values, and your beliefs. Now, how are we going to set this in the paper that we're all in the same agreement, knowing research and facts that we're not going to be harmful with our actions with our children? That's very important. So taking parenting courses and understanding what authoritative parenting is, that's really essential, because that's what scientifically is known to be one of the best methods of parenting. So you balance yourself out and how to self-regulate yourself out, so you're able to create that environment for the children and move forward.
Yeah, well said, absolutely. And are there any other examples or circumstances that you've noticed that can cause sibling rivalry that you want to touch upon as well?
Well, we talked about top parents. We talked about feeling jealous or unloved and feeling compared. But what I also want to really touch about is their cognitive perception of situation. How a 2-year-old deals with sibling rivalry is very different how a 4-year-old or a 10-year-old or a 14-year-old or an adult deals with it. So it becomes to be our responsibility as parents in early stages to really put that ground step to make sure we're creating that steady levels for them to understand, okay, you know what, this action of mine, it's not proper because I'm not showing empathy.
Right.
And why am I not showing empathy? Or my brother has the right in this section, because now you're teaching them problem solving. So getting the children to think of their action and going back and using problem solving to eliminate rivalry. So it's really teaching them the skills.
And I think what also might help to relieve some potential anxiety with parents when they have moments where their children are not getting along well or they're not getting along functionally. Those are teachable moments. If there are these moments, don't necessarily get too riled up or too anxious as a parent. We're trying to remember that those are moments that you can use as teaching tools. Like, hey, you kind of did it this way. We've tried it this way. Now we know the results of that. Now we can do something a little bit different. Try not necessarily to get too anxious about these things, because when there are moments where things are not happening as they should, they're not necessarily happening in a functional manner, it doesn't necessarily have to be a bad thing. It can be a moment where you say, hey, you know what? How did we feel about this? Ooh, that didn't feel very nice at all. That felt really icky. We know how we got to that icky feeling. What can we now do next time so we don't have to experience that icky feeling ever again? Again, these moments can be used as teaching tools rather than a complete detriment and catastrophe that is long-term and everlasting.
Exactly. That is part of authoritative parenting, where there will be teachable moments, and that's where the problem solving comes in, because situations will happen among children that as a parent we do need to get involved. It's just how we deal with it. And if a situation happens, how to revise it and how to support it and how to watch for future incidents.
Yes, absolutely. And we can perhaps talk about some steps that parents can take to improve sibling relationships. I think this will be great, especially for relationships that are dysfunctional, let's say.
Well, normally when you are an authoritative parent, these are the skills you carry as a parent when it comes to your day-to-day parenting. It takes time to recognize these steps and make them as a daily practice. It's not impossible. It's just becoming more attuned emotionally and learning how to regulate your own emotion in order to be able to be more present in your child's life in their day-to-day parenting. And recognizing that at times, as parents, we do need to take a break from a situation and we need to reflect on our own self-care to regulate before moving forward to help our children in their situation.
Absolutely. When we talk about specific steps that a parent can take to improve sibling relationships, I love the fact that you touched upon this, where you said, take care of you first. Because of course, if you haven't taken care of yourself and regulating yourself, you're going to be all out of fuel and you're not going to have the ability to help anybody else. Also, when you take time to educate yourself on how to be really mindful of your own emotions and aware of them, what you can do to regulate yourself, you're going to have that knowledge base based upon just the theories behind it and also the practice. And then it will be very easy to pass that on to your children. When we're feeling icky, when things are getting heated, this is what we do. Take a breath, realize how our body is feeling in this moment, and sit in those feelings and then talk about them. Say, hey, I'm really feeling angry right now. I want to say something mean. And that's okay to say that you want to do these things. It's one thing to say that you have these thoughts. It's another thing to actually act upon them. And I believe that Rose would also agree that educating yourself on emotional awareness and emotional attunement and regulation is vitally important for yourself first and foremost, so you can help your children out.
Thanks for that, Adam. Yeah. When it comes to taking steps for improving the sibling relationship, obviously, if you have a newborn baby and you have a toddler, it's really important before even having the baby, having a little doll for your toddler or for your preschooler. So they're taking care of the doll like a baby. It's more play therapy. So they're learning about kindness, being soft with the child. So as a parent, you're not emotionally in red zone when they're going next to the baby. You're worried that they're going to hurt the child. They don't understand, if I'm going to go pull the child's cheek, I'm going to hurt the child. They think by pulling the child's cheek, they're showing their affection. That's when parents become to be in red zone because they know it's danger. They start saying, don't do that to your baby sister, or don't do that to your baby brother. So that begins to create feeling for the toddler or preschooler where they cannot identify where that feeling is coming from. So it's really important to create an environment where the child is experiencing safe play. with a doll, which that eventually will become the new baby in the house. Creating that soft, safe conversation environment, it's very important. And giving them the attention, making them feel that they're loved. So they're participating eventually with certain tasks. And you're still taking time out where they have that one-on-one time with you. So now all of a sudden their time is not divided. Right. And another thing that can create that sibling rivalry is that normally when a new baby is born, that's when parents are thinking, oh, I'm going to put my other child to school now just to give me some time. No, you need to be doing those things at least 3-4 months before the baby is out. Right. So that detachment process from you is completed, and there's that doll therapy or play therapy that you're doing before the birth of the newborn. Now, let's say you have a toddler and you have a preschooler and you have a sibling rivalry happening in the home. It becomes to that ground rules. And that's why taking the authoritative parenting course we offer at Inventive Minds, it's essential because it actually teaches you about authoritative parenting. And once you start in becoming an authoritative parent and it becomes a daily practice, these things are naturally there for you. So it becomes like a snap of a finger. You know exactly what to do and how to do. You need to have ground rule in your home and you need to follow those ground rules. Each child should have time to play on their own and play together. That should be part of your set ground. So they're giving that opportunity to have their own personal space and shared space. And when they're having their separate time, that's the time you want to interact with each child and you want to be recognizing that children have voice.
That makes sense.
And respecting to hear their voices. Those are the teachable moments, Adam. That's when you start teaching them about problem solving. You start thinking them about what to think next. And that's perfect for a toddler or a preschooler, mostly a preschooler because they can verbalize it. With toddlers, you can start labeling emotions by showing pictures so they can express in their emotions. And then you start teaching them, okay, when you're feeling sad, this is what we can do. And then you give them a choice because they do have it. I've heard 4-year-olds that say, I feel invisible with my brother.
Right.
That's a huge word to hear from a 4-year-old, but they felt it. So what's happening in that home for a 4-year-old to feel that? It could have started early as toddlerhood. That's why our parenting becomes to be so important. Right?
And also remember that feelings are neutral.
Exactly.
You felt something, you don't feel good about it, but it doesn't have to be a catastrophe or anything like that.
When we talk about sibling rivalry, it's really throwing scenarios and trying to solve the scenarios as we move forward.
Absolutely. I wanted to talk about how to handle sibling fighting. As a result of sibling rivalries, you'll see a lot of fighting, whether physical, emotional, psychological.
Yeah. So first is our parenting and our emotional regulation. Then is the situation. So whenever there's a sibling rivalry, I always say to parents, take a step back and analyze. What was happening before the situation? Was it that one child didn't have their nap? One child didn't have their food? Was it that child didn't sleep well the night before, had a nightmare or a night terror? Or did something happen between you and that child before the incident, or with the sister or brother, whatever the situation is? So what happened before, what happened during, and what did you do after? And that's the same thing you need to look at yourself. Are you looking at this in a red zone? Are you dealing with this in a blue zone? Because if you're dealing with this in a red zone, you're going to get a red flag coming in. If you're dealing in this in a blue zone, you're able to really resolve it and move forward and teach them. So it then becomes teachable.
When you say blue and red, just for those that don't know, red is essentially heated because red is hot. Blue is colder, a little more cool and even.
You're regulated. So red zone is when you're not regulated. Blue zone is when you're regulated. And when you're in a red zone, we're not able to mostly think, we're reacting. When you're in calm situation, you're not reacting, you're solving.
Yes.
When a child is in that high level, you also need to teach them how to come to the blue level before you help them. Because an incident doesn't need to happen if you're following with the before situation. Not that it won't happen, because it will happen. It's human. So you can't say, I'm never going to have a sibling rivalry happen. No, but you can limit it and you can make it into a point where it can become something positive rather than something negative. And that's what we're talking about.
Absolutely. Very well said. Can you give us some tips to cool things down when sibling fights break out?
Some of that is by looking at all the emotions that are going with it. Is it from hunger? Where is this being triggered from? The way to help the child to regulate is by teaching them how to count from 10 to 1, where it helps you to cool down faster. And you want to teach them how to breathe in and out, and also using their hands as you're teaching them, going through the fingers and taking deep breaths in and out with each one. So those are some of the ways that you can help cool your child to take them from the red to the blue to deal with the situation. Now, let's say there is an argument, there's a fight. If it's a safety concern, it's really important that you remove one of the child from the environment. You don't want the other one to get hurt. You want to go to the child that was hurt first, make sure it's okay. But then you want to hear both kids' voices. You don't want to already assume that this person is at fault. This is why it's important to know what happened before to try to resolve the situation.
Well, yeah, great points. We've talked about a lot of stuff today, a lot of stuff. And is there anything else that you wanted to make sure that you touched upon before we end up having to end our podcast and workshop today?
I just want to say that one of the most important part of parenting is self-care. We started with self-care. We're going to end up with self-care. If we are not able to take care of ourselves, we won't be able to fully be able to support our children into their day-to-day parenting. So really taking that self-care of half an hour for yourself, whether that is having a cup of tea, doing something you enjoy, taking a half an hour walk, those are very crucial in order to be emotionally attuned, in order to create that attuned environment in your home with your children.
Like we already said, if you haven't taken care of yourself effectively, you're not going to have the fuel to be able to help anybody else out. And look for opportunities to just take that time to get some breathing room, to get some time just for you that will help you just kind of chill and be there for your children the way that we all want to be there for our children. Also, look for ways to educate yourself. Rose, you were talking about a course that you offer for parents.
It's a small group. We normally have between 5 to 8 families, couples in the group. It's for content focus, where we really dip into different type of parenting, self-regulation with Shankar Institute. We dip into the positive parenting with Triple P International. We offer 3 one-on-one sessions for families on Zoom, and we help the parents deal with their parenting situation and their parenting struggles. And the program we offer goes from infancy to teen. So we run the programs monthly, and it's very liked by our families because we are a not-for-profit. It's a very small fee, which is $200, that has 3 sessions of therapy and 4 sessions of group.
And that in amongst a lot of complementary programs as well.
Yes.
Yeah. So take advantage of those.
That's a good thing about having kids when you're younger and older. You get to reparent ourselves and move forward. I have a 22-year-old myself, and even being a school principal, it's been definitely a journey of growth and learning. And I think learning never ends. Taking that initiative is wonderful. So I'm glad you're taking initiatives.
Thank you so much for all that information. So happy to have all of you listening in to this. Thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you for joining this Inventive Minds Child, Youth, and Family Support Center workshop. Do visit www.inventivekids, again with a Z and not an S, a Z.com, to learn about the many other workshops available coming up soon. You can connect with Inventive Minds via email at inventivekids, again with a Z, at gmail.com for any parenting challenges so their professional team can connect with you. Check out a replay of this and many of our other podcasts by searching Inventive Kids with a Z on YouTube and the Parent Toolbox on Spotify. Join the Parent Toolbox Facebook community group today by searching the Parent Toolbox on Facebook. Thank you, and we look forward to seeing you again soon.
Thank you, Ada.
Thanks, Rose. Bye.